So, to set up the scripture, because it is football season, we just had the national championship. We're in the middle of some crazy playoffs games that have happened this week. Is imagine, if you will, you're the underdog on a football team and you have come from behind and you have made it. And you are right at the end zone to make that touchdown that is going to put you on top. And here you are at like the last scrimmage, and suddenly your quarterback just dematerializes, vanishes. That's kind of what happened when when the Israelites, they had escaped Egypt and they had been roaming the desert for a very, very long time, and here they were, at the River Jordan, I think they were just about to cross over into the so-called Promised Land when Moses does what he does. It's time for him to go, and he just materializes. Now you can imagine at that time when you've got somebody that's been leaving you there, and suddenly you are at the clinch of something that's very momentous, that how are you going to go forward? They suddenly felt lost without their leader. Now, granted, he had a wingman, a sideman named Joshua, who had been learning at his right side and was able to take over and start things off. But you can imagine when everything that has connected you and grounded you to a purpose everything made sense. All of a sudden, it's gone, and you feel lonely, or you can feel abandoned at that time. And so I have that's the background to today's verse, which I learned when I was about 12, 13 years old, and it has been one of my favorites ever since. And that is from the book of Joshua, chapter 1, verse 9. Have I not commanded you? Do not tremble or be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you may go. Now, a couple weeks ago, if you were here or you're tuning in through Zoom, I did a sermon on the necessary habit of solitude, and it was depicted by the hermit card out of the Tarot, which is also depicted in our light here, depicted with our stained glass window over here to your right. And I talked about the value of intentionally going into moments of personal retreat to examine yourself, recalibrate, refuel, so you can maximize the light within you, so then you can illuminate it out in the world. But there's a flip side to that, and it is often depicted in the practice of Tarot, that when the Hermit card is upside down. And so I put that on the cover. It wasn't an error. It wasn't like that rare Jenny of airplane of postage stamp that is upside down. That was an accidental run that is now worth millions of dollars. It wasn't like that. So you can't actually hold on to this bulletin and hope it's going to be worth something someday. But it upside down in the Tarot, it means kind of the flip side of that coin, and it is something to be mindful of. So instead of solitude, it is isolation. And there are two different things. Those are two very different things, because solitude has an intention. And obviously, as the Hermit card says, there's going to be light going out into the world, but also you're working on your own inner light. Isolation, and if I'd had good photoshopping skills, I would have made this lantern dark, because we know that isolation is a little bit different, and it's dangerously different. It also is equated with loneliness. Now, the U.S. Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murthy, was very concerned about this epidemic of loneliness we have. And he wrote, "Our epidemic of loneliness and isolation has been an underappreciated public health crisis that has harmed individual and societal health. Our relationships are a source of healing and well-being hiding in plain sight, one that can help us live healthier, more fulfilled, and more productive lives. Given the significant health consequences of loneliness and isolation, we must prioritize building social connection the same way we've prioritized other critical public health issues such as tobacco, obesity, and substance abuse disorders. Together, we can build a country that's healthier, more resilient, and more connected. Now, this isn't just an American issue because in 2018, the United Kingdom appointed a minister of loneliness. And it was Tracy Crouch, a member of parliament, who became that minister. And she had said that after giving birth to her first child, Freddie, in 2016, she says that despite having a network of friends, family, and a wonderful partner, she began feeling cut off from the world. It felt like I was in a very dark place, a very lonely place, she said in an interview. Now, last year, a Meta Gallup poll of 142 countries, which is over two-thirds of the nation, of the countries on this planet, a Meta Gallup poll revealed that nearly 1 in 4 of people over 15 years of age self-reported as feeling fairly lonely in response to this question. How lonely do you feel? Now, that rate was even higher among young adults, 19 through 29, people who supposedly living in the prime of their life. They have all the energy in the world to go out and explore and stay out until the sun comes up. And yet, people from 19 to 29 years old, that rose to 27%. Now, back in the early 1970s, a 25-year-old singer, right in the middle of that demographic, named Gilbert O'Sullivan, hit #1 on the Billboard Top 40 6 weeks in a row with a song called Alone Again, Naturally. Now, the song became a classic because of lyrics like this, and I think it's because it hit home with a lot of people even back then. Looking back over the years and whatever else that appears, I remember I cried when my father died, never wishing to hide the tears. And at 65 years old, my mother, God rest her soul, couldn't understand why the only man she had ever loved had been taken, leaving her to start with a heart so badly broken. Despite encouragement from me, no words were ever spoken. And when she passed away, I cried and cried all day, alone again, naturally. But loneliness is not a natural state. If it were, study after study would not be linking it to lower resilience, physical and mental and emotionally, as well as decreased longevity. Now, while loneliness was certainly around in the 1970s when O'Sullivan wrote his hit song, it was the digital era that seems to have escalated it. Now, early in my teaching career, a study circulated among my fellow professors that indicated that students who took lecture notes the old-fashioned way with pen and paper retained a lot more of our lectures than those who typed it into a computer. Now, the cynic in me said, well, it's probably because they were surfing the web at the same time. But they monitored that. They monitored it. And it turns out we human beings, we're an analog species. The loneliness epidemic is not a product of the COVID quarantine. It was well underway in the before times, as evidenced by England's appointment of their loneliness minister in 2018. So it comes to no surprise to me that contemporary sociologists and mental health specialists have determined that online relationships are a poor substitute for real-time human engagement. We are an analog species. While purposeful solitude, the hermit, has benefits for both spirituality, isolation does not. And Confucius warned that isolation, even when intentional, was not a healthy spiritual pathway. Siddhartha, living and starving with the ascetics in the wilderness, learned this the hard way. Metaphysically, it does us no good knowing we're connected to the divine if we don't feel connected to other people. You've seen the bumper sticker a million times. I'm a spiritual being having a human experience. It takes human interaction for us to have that human experience. Now, 2 weeks ago, we considered how the intent of the hermit was a better way to allow our light to shine upon the world. But we also examined the ways that light can be shuttered. And we want our authentic selves to let our light shine, do we not? We know, and we also talked about 2 weeks ago about the things about our lives, the things that we're carrying around that do shutter our light. It's unique to each of you. Sure, there's some commonality, but you kind of examine there's some things that are just shuttering your true self from illuminating on the world. Feelings of self-doubt, inadequacy, unworthiness. But these are false feelings. Now, the late Tina Turner called them her ghost voices, and it was finally getting the skill to ignore them that she was finally able to be open, was finally able to receive genuine love for the first time in her life, and something that had eluded her even in childhood. Now, metaphysically, we often call this error thinking, and biblically, this great deceiver is embodied as Satan, especially in the New Testament. And yes, even the master teacher wrestled with it both at Gethsemane and on the cross. I'm a spiritual being having a human experience. And when we see that the human and spiritual experiences are interlinked, we begin to understand how the things that make us feel separated from other people can make us feel separate from God. Not the ubiquitous God, but our God spark. Right? So I have a friend named Stephen, and I have a long running joke with him that he could precede me in death by 30 minutes. And by the time I got up there, he would be on a first name basis with St. Peter. And I realized just by observing him that what his knack is he makes conversation freely and easily. And that's not easy for me. It is, to have conversations with strangers. But I realized, what is he doing? We're at a restaurant. He's having conversations with the people waiting in line, with the server, with the cashier. And it's just a simple human interaction. And those moments when I'm with him and I see him doing this are lighter, more illuminated. And we all leave just a little bit more warm and a little bit more fuzzy as we go to our table, as we collect our bags and go to the car. And I realized I can do that. It is so easy. And so despite my my instinct to just stay in my cocoon, to keep my lantern shuttered, get my bags and get to my car, I forced that shutter open and I have that simple interaction. And my life has been the better for it. It is still it does flow more naturally now than it used to, but it is something that I do sometimes if I catch myself being in my cocoon to don't waste this moment. Just crawl a little bit and have a human interaction. Now, these little in-person interactions aren't just a drop in the bucket. They're actually enough. So much so that the World Health Organization included them in a strategy for longer life. 6 daily habits that can reduce by almost 80% instances of heart disease, stroke, and type 2 diabetes. 1, eat whole plant-based foods each day. 2, sleep a minimum of 6 hours a night, ideally 7 to 9. Listen to your mom and dad. 3, move 150 minutes a week. Notice they didn't say sweat. Notice they didn't say pump iron. Notice they didn't say Peloton. Move 150 minutes a week. 4, avoid tobacco and alcohol. That's 4 and 5. And then 6, and prioritize social interactions. Prioritize social interactions. What kind, they said? Saying hello to your neighbors. Talk about the weather. Again, chat with the cashier. That's all it takes. Now, it really is that easy. Every day, says the WHO. And these little moments not only help us connect with other people, they help the people we engage with in reducing our own isolation. We are reducing theirs. A 2-for-1, if you will. A meditation teacher I used to work with, or I used to attend, he liked to call it stealth karma. It's just a neat way of putting out and having it come back. It's like a two for one. The bridge from O'Sullivan's song gives us some ray of hope, actually. It seems to me that there are more hearts broken in the world that can't be mended, left unattended. What do we do? What do we do? Let me repeat. There are more hearts broken in the world that can't be mended, left unattended. What do? We exercise the power in the smallest interactions, and in doing so, we heal not just ourselves, but we heal others. When I was young, I used to recite today's scripture as a means to give me strength in a challenging or fearful situation. Have I not commanded you, Brian? Do not tremble or be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you may go. But these days, I distill it down to 3 words. You're not alone. You're not alone.